you know, we're the flagship program in this state, right? And
a bullshit, a bullshit, a bullshit, a bullshit.
Welcome to the Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports, episode 49. Let's play that again in case y'all didn't catch it.
you know, we're the flagship program in this state, right? And
A bullshit, a bullshit, a bullshit, a bullshit.
Welcome in to episode 49 of Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. Glad to have you in. Monday, February the 12th, 9 p.m., the day after Super Bowl 58, the most watched Super Bowl in the history of broadcast television, with the Chiefs going back to back. We'll see if they can three-peat next year. Welcome in, episode 49. We have something very special planned for episode 50. If you are a Texas Longhorn through and through, you will want to tune in for episode 50. We're basically going to be ranking the best Texas Longhorns athletes since 2000. So they had to have played their careers at Texas in the 2000s. So we'll do that tomorrow. We're also going to have an episode on Friday. It's going to be a college basketball centered episode. We'll explain that a little later this week. But welcome in. If you're tuning in live, please feel free to leave your comments, opinions, and questions in the chat. Like and subscribe, and go check out all the other content that we put on this channel. Joining me, a little under the weather due to, I believe, COVID, but still here, getting ready to talk some Texas baseball and some NFL draft stuff. Nixon, what's up, man?
I'm doing good, man. I took a long shower, trying to just clear up the congestion a little bit, and I'm feeling a little bit better. But yeah, I'm excited to do this episode. We've already pushed this episode back a few days now because of me. So I would have just felt worse just not getting this in. I think a little bit of draft stuff. We're going to be identifying all of the number one players from the positions where we see debate happening. So cornerback, running back, offensive tackle, etc. And then Texas baseball, man. This is 4 days away now. We're getting into the thick of it, and I think it's long overdue. The preview is long overdue. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think it was. Goodness, I'm trying to remember. It was either episode 47. I think it was episode 47 where we got into Texas baseball a little bit. But today we're getting even deeper into it. This is kind of our preview part 2. So if you want to see preview part 1, you can go find that. Should be in the title. Make sure you're checking under the live section of our YouTube channel to find Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. It's a big dit hole week. For those of you who love this show and tune in somewhat regularly, you're going to get some good content this week. As long as I'll be here. You can guarantee yourself of that. I wanted to start actually at the end of the show. I have a couple Longhorn football notes that I need to just get out there, and I want to get my thoughts out there on. There's a note on Arch that I'd like to address. And then there's something else having to do with Sark's staff and recruiting that I'd also like to address. But we'll do that at the end of the show. We haven't really addressed Texas football in a couple episodes in particular, just because, with February and the dead period now in recruiting, no official visits going on for the 25 class. We just actually wrapped up the 24 class, so none of that's now happening. It's a little bit slow. The portal's closed. It's open for Michigan players until the 23rd because of Harbaugh leaving, but I think you're going to see those Michigan players, if any enter, they're going to wait until after spring practice. I think that's when you'll see more action when the portal opens up again. And then Sark had a press conference on National Signing Day. The Longhorns didn't sign anybody of note, but he did have a press conference, and there was some interesting stuff to come out of that press conference. So we'll address all that near the end of the show. You want to start with this NFL draft stuff?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, so we're going to go, I think, through 6 positions here that we think are up for debate. Really 5, but we're also going to talk about receiver. Who's the best guy outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., who we think we agree, and the public pretty much agrees, is probably the best receiver in this class. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball with running back. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the running back position.
Yeah, I think for me, I have my number one running back, Trey Benson. Excuse me, Trey Benson from Florida State. I watch his game. I watch his his highlights, and I can't help but kind of see Jonathan Taylor, like a big physical back that has that breakaway speed, good vision, footwork. I think the passing game part of it, he's already really proficient in terms of pass blocking and picking up blitzes. Has to get better in terms of making catches out of the backfield, but that'll come in due time. I think he's one of those guys where you pick him up in the second round, he's going to be immediately be a guy you can have as your workhorse back.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was close on this one. I considered actually Jonathan Brooks, maybe 1 or 2 other guys, but I went with Trey Benson. I like his size, 6'1", about 225, athletic, well-rounded running back prospect. He's watched a lot of Florida State, first of all, so I know a lot about the Florida State players in this draft. But thick, powerful frame, 6'1", 225, moves well for a big back like himself. Solid quickness and agility. Can change gaps behind the line of scrimmage. Has enough speed on the edge when he gets outside the tackles. He can go a little bit, enough burst up field to pick up yardage as a receiver. I like his upside as a pass catcher out of the backfield. And he's got relatively low mileage as a runner throughout his college career, especially over the past 2 years. Only 310 carries over the last 2 years. So low wear and tear compared to runners who had a heavier workload at the college level. I think he's going to be a really good back. You worry a little bit about his absolute athletic upside. Like, I classify him as more of a good but not great athlete. He's got good speed, but he's not going to run away from more athletic guys.
Yeah.
But that's really nitpicking at that point. So yeah, I mean, I consider Jonathan Brooks. I think if it wasn't for that injury, and if he were to maybe play out the rest of the season, we could have a better conversation about that. But this isn't necessarily who we think is going to get drafted first. That's totally different than best guy. And so it's close, but I think we agree, Trey Benson. So let's move on to the receiver position. We agree. Do you agree that Marvin Harrison is the best receiver in this draft? Just to make sure we agree on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think as we've addressed on past episodes, he might be the best receiving prospect since maybe a Julio Jones or someone of that nature. I think he's as close to complete, like as close to a can't miss prospect at the receiver position as you're going to get.
Now, second question. Could we make the argument that the gap between him and number 2, whoever you think that is closer, a lot closer than some might think. Would you agree with that?
Definitely. I mean, 100%. I even mentioned it in our mock draft. I think if you're the Patriots or the Chargers at 3 or at 4 or at 5, one of those teams, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is on the board, there's an argument to be made to where you might consider trading down so you can grab a Malik Neighbors or a Roma Dunze. I think it's just a question of how you value the wide receiver position.
Okay, so who is your number 2 receiver just behind Marv?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly close. First of all, I think Roma Dunze and Malik Neighbors. I think they just have a completeness to their games. I think they're both very polished in terms of route running. I think more so Roma Dunze than Neighbors, but it's incredibly close. But for me, I love the hands catching ability of Neighbors and just his ability to go high point the football, and that to me was the determining factor. I think just the run after catch ability, the ability to adjust to the football and the deep passes. I just think he's going to be the ultimate playmaker. I just think he's not going to have a problem getting open. He's incredibly athletic and already extremely skilled in his route running ability, and I trust his hands as well. And it's not that I don't trust Roma Dunze, but I think you saw more often with a Dunze. Sometimes he would catch it with his body, and that, for me personally, I just like the fact that Neighbors always goes up with it with his hands. I think that's valuable.
I agree with you. Malik Neighbors was my number 2, although I will say, I think Neighbors and Odunze are more like 2A and 2B.
Yeah.
Rather than 2 and 3. It's very, very close, but I just think Neighbors has a complete package of explosiveness, acceleration, and strength that allows him to be physically dominant, especially in run after catch situations, which I really like. As you mentioned, catches the ball, big playability, physical running after the catch, which is something I value in wide receivers, high-level competitor, played at the highest level of college football in the SEC. He's not perfect, but Odunze is great, right? I mean, out of anyone who watched college football and knows Washington, and watched Washington a lot this year, especially against our Longhorns, we know how good Odunze is. But Neighbors, I mean, I think he can run routes both as an outside receiver and a slot receiver. He showed an in-depth understanding of zone coverage and knows how to kind of work his way open and find the open areas of the football field, make himself available to the quarterback. He thrives in contested catch situations or 50-50 balls. He converts those at a very, very high level. He's just the kind of receiver that you want on your team and you don't want to go against on the other team. So, yeah, I think there's a good chance that all 3 of these guys go in the top 10, if not the top 15.
I could see a scenario where they go top 8 even.
Yeah. I mean, if you think that Odunze is number 2, please let us know in the chat. We like difference of opinion, even though we don't disagree all too often here.
And the more I watch, draft content, the more I'm seeing, people around the league like Odunze at 2 as well. So it's definitely a close debate for sure.
Okay, so now we get to offensive tackle. And here's my take on this. I think Joe Alt's the best all-around tackle in the draft. But I watched a lot of Olu Fashanu tape this week. And I think you can argue, just from a pure pass protection standpoint, that he's the best pass protector in this draft. Just from the tape that I watched. I watched the Ohio State game. I watched pretty much every big game that Penn State played in. And the dude is just excellent, mirroring, good feet. He's got a little narrow base, but I think that's coachable. He's just excellent in pass protection. Now, the questions come more in the run game with him. I think Alt is just a nice all-around offensive tackle prospect. You could also argue for J.C. Latham. You could argue for the guy from
Oregon State, Tulise
Oregon
Fuaga.
State. Yep. But I've liked Alt ever since I discovered him at Notre Dame a couple years ago. I just like his size, his all-around game as a football player. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this tackle class because I think it's a really, really nice class.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, if you look at Joe Alt's story, I mean, he came in as a 3-star recruit, and he immediately like just improved year over year over year in that Notre Dame weight development room, and just as soon as he got on the field, made an immediate impact. And if you look at offensive linemen that have been drafted out of Notre Dame over the past 10 or so years, I mean, it's as close to a can't miss as you can get. I mean, they do an amazing job with their offensive linemen, and I mean, as you said, Joe Alt, I think I would probably compare him to like probably not as physically uh, dominant as a Tristan Wirfs, but I would kind of compare him to a guy like that in terms of just not like extremely like insanely elite in pass protection and run blocking, but just like super solid in both and just rarely gets beat. Just so good with his technique and so good with just understanding angles and leverage.
Yeah. And another thing I like about him is he's carrying on his father's NFL legacy. So he's got those bloodlines. 6'8", what is he? 325 pounds. Athletic pedigree is matched by a series of accolades throughout his Notre Dame career. Starting as a freshman, where he started 8 games and played 613 snaps, and only allowed 1 quarterback hit and 3 sacks as a freshman. And he only got better throughout his college career. As a sophomore, he was first-team All-American from the Associated Press, Pro Football Focus, CBS Sports, 24/7 Sports, Action Network, and ESPN.com. And then last year, I mean, it was another elite year for him. Only allowed 1 sack, 5 total pressures. Another spot on the first-team All-American team. So he's just prototypical blindside protector, towering frame, and he's kind of got like tight end like athleticism to me when I watch him. He's a explosive, quick first step. Really utilizes his wingspan. He's just a really, really nice tackle prospect. And look, when I'm thinking about my team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm thinking about our needs, tackle's up there. I know we're not going to get Joe Alt, but there's a lot more that we could talk about in this tackle class that we'll start to get into more in depth here pretty soon. All right. Anything else you wanted to add there on any of the other guys and an argument someone else may have? I mean, we talked about Odunze having an argument with the receivers. Is there anyone that you think comes close to Joe Alt, or do you think there's a clear line of delineation there?
Well, I think any team that has, say, Aaron Rodgers, or just like someone who's a pocket passer or an older quarterback, I think would fall in love with Olu Fashanu's pass protection, as you mentioned. I mean, just the fluidity and just, I mean, he's extremely polished in pass protection. It's just, if you're going with Fuaga, or not Fuaga, Fashanu, you got to develop his, counters against power. That's where he got beat against Ohio State, was with the power rush. And that's really, I mean, he's 21 years old. That's not a huge concern to me. If you're a team like the Jets, where you're going to be throwing a lot anyway, you're going to be getting the ball out quickly.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. We're going to move to the defensive side of the ball now. We talked about offensive tackles. Let's talk about defensive tackles. So, who is your best defensive tackle in the 2024 NFL Draft?
Sorry, say that again. Sorry.
Who's your best defensive tackle in this class?
All right. My best defensive tackle.
I went with.
I think it's pretty close.
Yeah, go
It's
ahead.
between Johnny Newton and Malik Murphy, and for me personally, I give the edge to Malik Murphy. I think just the dominance that he showed at Texas. I think it's clear that he's improved. Like, his improvement track is really good to me. Um, you want a guy that has that steady improvement throughout college, and that you just want to be able to bring that guy in so you can continue on that. But it's super close because Johnny Newton's just so physically imposing, and he's going to come in and immediately be a run stuffer and make splash plays as a pass rusher as well. So it's tough, but you can't go wrong with either of them. If I'm being totally honest, I think for certain schemes, you probably, if you're like a attacking 3-4, you probably want Malik Murphy because he's a guy who penetrates and causes chaos in the backfield, and some teams want that more, and some teams just want the guy who's gonna, be able to break off a box and just stuff gaps. I guess just two gap basically.
Yeah, you. It came down to those two for me. I think when you look at Byron Murphy, he's kind of that shorter, kind of squattier kind of defensive tackle. He's going to play the 3 technique most of the time. He's not a monster like Sweat, but his quickness and his strength at the 3 technique yielded him almost a 92 pass rush grade from Pro Football Focus this past year. And he also made Bruce Feldman's from the Athletics college football freaks list for his strength. He's a guy that at Texas was squatting 455 pounds and power cleaning 375. I love Byron Murphy. I wish he was coming back for another season, but with how good he was this year, that just didn't make it possible. It's really close. I think Byron Murphy probably gets drafted first just because his stock is shooting through the roof right now. But
Yeah.
I went with Johnny Newton as my best defensive tackle, just by a hair. I think as an all-around interior defensive lineman, he was productive at Illinois in both run and pass. And his overall size, kind of on the smaller side, but his first step and elite speed, he's just in backfields all day long. Not that Byron Murphy wasn't, but it's really close. There's also this kid from Miami, Leonard Taylor. He's he's on the bigger side, 6'3", 305. But his pass rush win rate, and that's this pass rush win rate stuff is kind of. I'm not even gonna get into that, but whatever. His pass rush win rate, nevertheless, was one of the highest on the interior defensive line in college football. I don't know. I haven't really looked into him as much, but um, he's number 2 on Pro Football Focus. I think it's close though between Murphy and Newton. Okay. Anything you want to add to that, or
Yeah, I'll just touch on Leonard Taylor. I listened to a podcast called NFL Stock Exchange, and they did like their summer scouting, basically on upcoming NFL prospects last summer. And basically, what they said on Leonard Taylor was he was a former 5-star recruit and has all the physical tools in the world, but just hadn't been all put together yet before this season. And this season was where he started to kind of tie things together. So I think if you have a defensive coach and just wants to bring in just a ball of clay to kind of mold into what you want, I think Leonard Taylor might be your guy. And we know NFL teams tend to lean towards that sometimes, but it's risky.
okay? So we move from defensive tackle to edge. There's a group of guys here. There's Dallas Turner. There's Jared Verse. There's a guy from UCLA. Who'd you go with as your best edge prospect in this class?
Yeah, this was pretty tough, man. I went back and forth, and then even considered Latu as well, just because he's got a complete package in terms of pass rush moves. He's got a deep bag, and watching his tape, you can tell he studies Max Crosby and guys like that, TJ Watt, all those guys, because he's so sudden with his hand placement and movement. But for me, I ended up going with Dallas Turner. It's super close between him and Jared Verse, though. I think you can go either way with it. But for me, I think Dallas Turner, I think his physical tools and physicality, I think showed up more consistently on a play-by-play basis. I think Jared Verse, he wins with power a lot. And that tends to translate pretty well, but typically you want someone who can kind of go from speed to power or power to speed and kind of counter those two things. And Jared Verse hasn't quite honed in that yet. So that's why I gave the edge to Dallas Turner. No pun intended.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love Jared Verse. I like Latu as well from UCLA, but Turner's just a freak of nature. And maybe this is kind of confirmation bias just because I think I watched the most Dallas Turner more so than Jared Verse or Latu during the college season. But, we have time to change our opinions. Turner, though, I mean, all of these tools that he has led to high-level production at Alabama. 10 sacks, 14 tackles for loss this past season. Just a tantalizing physical foundation to work with at the next level. 6'4", 245 pounds. Lightning bolt speed off the line of scrimmage. And the thing that stands out to me about Turner is his hip flexibility and his ankle flexion when he's coming around the edge. He's he did Texas in a couple times, and just watching him, he's a dominant force to be reckoned with. But all that being said, I mean, Jared Verse, who came from the JUCO ranks, I believe,
Yeah.
from Florida State. or out of Florida State. He's a freak too. 9 sacks, 17 tackles for loss back in 2022. He's also a first round candidate. But I
And you could
like,
argue that if he came out last year, he'd be a Raider right now. He could have gone and
yeah,
in that spot Tyree Wilson went.
but I like, as I mentioned, I like Turner's bend and hit flexibility just a little bit better. But Verse is still excellent. Explosive force, ruthless power. And he's very, very good in run support. He's a viable, like, top 15 pick as well. So we'll see where he goes. That's more for a discussion for another day. We're not necessarily talking about fit or where these guys get drafted. We're just going with our best pure football player at each position of debate. So lastly, we have defensive back. We didn't go corner. We didn't really go safety. We just said best defensive back in the class. So who did you go with?
For me, I went with it's really tight, but I went with Cooper DeJean. I think what he brings to the table is extreme versatility. You put him in the slot, you put him outside, you put him at safety, strong safety, free safety, doesn't matter. I mean, he's getting on the field and he's going to make plays. He's a football player. He reminds me a little bit of what Kyle Hamilton was kind of coming out, but he's not. He's not really the same player at all in terms of like his build, but just in terms of versatility and what you can ask him to do out there is just. I think he brings a versatility that is so sought after in today's NFL. Where if a guy's going down to injury, which inevitably you will, you want guys that you can plug into different spots as like a chess piece. And Cooper DeJean just fits the bill in terms of that. Not to mention his kick return prowess. And I mean, you could throw the dude on offense. He'll go out and make plays too. Like he's just a. I mean, he's just like all around football player.
Yeah, he's something else, which is why. I mean, that Iowa defense was something else. They were really good for a reason. He was in the spotlight as a star defensive back for that very, very good defense. And hell, they maybe should have used him more on offense, considering how bad their offense is to begin with. No, I mean, you really took the words out of my mouth. The versatility is what stands out to me. You can line this kid up just about anywhere. He's an asset on special teams too, as you mentioned. But that versatility and his rare athleticism is what makes him so enticing as a secondary prospect, a defensive back, not just a corner, but also a safety. If you wanted to put him there, he could slide back to safety and use his instincts. He could play slot corner. He could play outside corner. You can rotate him, pretty much put him wherever you want, and this kid's going to go make plays. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm slowly starting to watch more of these guys in this corner class or this secondary class. I like some of the things that the Toledo kid has shown.
Quindell Mitchell.
Yep, I really like him. The Nate Wiggins kid from Clemson's enticing as well.
Nate Wiggins.
Yep.
Yeah, Nate Wiggins, Kerry Arnold, Kool-Aid
Yep.
McKinstry. It's a really good class.
It's loaded. The Steelers need one of these guys. They need one of these guys to pair with JPJ. So we'll see where that goes. But anything else you want to add?
No, not really. I think Terry and Arnold, you could argue, you can go back and forth with it. For me, it's between those two, but there's also The physical tools of a rake straw from Missouri is kind of catching people's eyes as well. He turned heads at the Senior Bowl, or it may have been the Shrine Bowl. I'm not sure, but he was turning heads as well already. But yeah, pick your poison.
I think what we're going to do. So tonight's episode 49, right? Episode 50 is going to be our ranking. That's going to be that. But episode 51 will be college basketball. Episode 52 is going to be something draft related. I'd like to get a little deeper into the Texas guys at some point. I don't know what that's going to look like, but something along those lines, or maybe we go deeper into positional rankings. And then on our actual podcast, we can do a mock draft next week. That will involve trades, and we can go a little further with it. We can go to like top 20 picks or something like that. So if you want to hear more draft talk, it's coming soon, but just know that. All right. Let's move on here to baseball. Texas baseball. They opened the season here on Friday against San Diego at home. They have like 5 or 6 games before they really get going against some better competition. But I wanted to talk today just a little deeper into the roster and where it stands, our confidence in each part of the team going in to this first slate of games on Friday, which is opening day. Let's start with the lineup. This lineup, a lot of experience coming back for Texas. My confidence meter right now is probably about a 7.5 with this Texas offense out of 10. I think they're in really good shape from a position player standpoint. Talk about the return of several experienced players. But that doesn't mean, just because you have a lot of experience coming back, doesn't mean you're without any question marks. And I'll talk about that here in a second. But as I mentioned in our last baseball episode, I think they have a really excellent core of guys. Jared Thomas is like kind of the star of the show. He hit 321 last year, and he's expected to take yet another big step forward this season. He's back for another year. He was slated to start in center, but I think the Longhorns are going to have to move him back to first base, given that Luke Storm, a Duke transfer who was slated to come in and slot in at first base as a productive power bat in the middle of this lineup, announced last week that he's stepping away from baseball. He's done playing baseball. We don't know why. It's something personal. Hopefully everything's good there. But he's no longer going to be playing baseball. That was kind of not so great news for the Longhorns. But look, this David Pierce team takes it on the fly. They know how to adjust. I think they're going to move Jared Thomas from center to first base. He's going to play first, and then they'll figure out the outfield with one of their talented freshmen. Jack O'Dowd's returning at second base. Very familiar face. Last year, he had some key hits, ended the season with a batting average just under 290. He's not a flashy defender at second base, but he's reliable. He makes the routine plays routinely. And that's what you'll hear a lot about at the MLB level is just, can you make the simple plays, or do you fuck those up? And he's very, very steady, both defensively and offensively. And then Peyton Powell at third. He's coming back, and I think he's going to he has some big shoes to fill. He's got to fill the shoes of Eric Kennedy, but I really like him as a player. He's got some pop to his bat. And then Porter Brown, downtown Porter Brown. He's back for another season. His return is huge, both from a production and experience standpoint. He was a transfer from TCU that came in before last year. And he was a key cog in Texas's offense last season. He hit 322 with 14 doubles and 12 homers, along with 59 RBIs. I expect him to take another step. So that core here for Texas is really going to be, I think, the driving force of this lineup. And to add to all of that, you have Jalen Flores, who I think is going to take the biggest step possibly. He's my breakout candidate for this Texas team, the shortstop. One of the more highly touted freshmen in college baseball last year. He struggled offensively for much of the year. He 175, 4 homers, 23 RBIs, but he's had a really strong fall from what I hear. He's going to take another step forward. If he hits 250, there's an uptick in production there, that would be huge for this Texas offense. But that still remains kind of a question mark. And then the other kind of question marks for this offense, which is why I'm at a 7.5 and not like an 8 or a 9, which I definitely could be, is number one, they're likely going to have 2 freshmen starting in the outfield with Will Gasparino and Tommy Farmer, who's going to step in, I think, at center field. They're both very, very talented freshmen and could definitely make an impact. I think Texas thinks they will make an impact, but we'll just have to see. There's no guarantee that these guys come in and crush it at the plate. And then also, catcher is another interesting question mark. You have Ryan Galvin, you have Kimball Schuessler, but I'm interested to see who takes the reins at the catching position to replace Silas Ardoin in that production. So catching and then the outfield with those 2 freshmen are some question marks. Along with Jalen Flores, does he really take that next step? But the core of this Texas lineup is as good as it gets. And I think this will be the Texas offense will be one of the strengths of this team. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm right there with you. My confidence meter, I put down at 8 for my confidence meter. I think Jalen Flores has to be a big part of that. And as you said, I think in order for the lineup to have the balance it needs to have, like 1 or 2 of these guys have to step up. I think maybe one of these freshmen, maybe Will Gasparino as the big time recruit to come in. Maybe he can step up. Maybe it's Luke Storm. But either way, I think it's got to be outside of Porter Brown. It's got to be one of these support players from last year, or maybe one of these new guys stepping up and becoming one of the main 4 or 5 guys in the lineup.
Yeah. As far as the rotation goes, let's talk about the starting pitching. Assuming everybody stays healthy, my confidence meter for the starting pitching is at 8.5. Now, that's assuming that Tanner Witt is healthy and pitching at a very not super high level, but just a reliable, he's a reliable day 2, day 3 guy. I'm making that assumption in this confidence meter. I think you look at LBJ, the ace of this staff. I think he's going to be a top 5 pitcher in college baseball this year. He is one of the better starters in the country. He was at the end of last year. We saw what he did in the regional against Miami with that complete game shutout. That's big time. And, he carries – I think he's going to carry that over to this year. 98 mile per hour with his fastball consistently. And that splitter that he throws off that fastball is devastating. And when he's on with the splitter, he's almost unhittable. 86, 87 miles per hour with his splitter. He's a big-time weapon. If he can really develop like a third and a fourth pitch, watch out. Watch out. If he can like develop another third pitch and throw that into his arsenal, maybe a slider, a curveball, whatever it may be. If he can do that more consistently, along with that fastball that plays up at 98 and that splitter that just disappears off the plate, it's scary what that man can do. Tanner Witt is the crux of this conversation. He's going to be really the key to how good this starting rotation is. But as I mentioned, I mean, if he just gets back his confidence and his stamina, he has the ability. Played summer baseball at the Cape Cod League, was sitting around 94, 95 with his fastball. He's got a really good curveball, but it just wasn't crisp last year in short stints coming off that elbow surgery. I think I'm really confident in this kid. He's been elite before. I think he can get back, maybe not to elite, but very good. I'm very confident in that. And then Charlie Hurley's the sleeper. As your Sunday starter, 6'8", 215 pounds in 22 games last season. He tallied a 4.42 ERA in 55 innings, went 5-0 in his starts. Gets up to 95, 96 with his fastball, has a slider too, which sits in the mid 80s. I think he's going to take another step. So as a trio, I'm really confident in this starting rotation, assuming that, of course, Tanner Witt is healthy.
Yeah, as you said, Tanner Witt's the main thing. To me, it's going to be more so like a feel thing for Tanner Witt. I think once the season starts, if he starts well, I think that'll be the big tell. Because once you get the ball rolling, you have a player that good. I think that mental side will come around once he sees that once he's out there doing it again. He sees he's back, and he'll start believing he's back. So that's going to be the big thing. I think his first start the first few starts really, we'll kind of see, we'll kind of get a gauge on how he's feeling and where he's at. And, depending, if he's fully back, then that changes things, because then you have two legit, top 50, and that's being generous as well, top 50 in the nation type pitchers, maybe even top 30, top 20. The sky's the limit if Tanner Witt is feeling like himself again.
Yeah. As far as the bullpen is concerned, it's a weird conversation, right? Because the Longhorns got some tough news on the injury front coming out of fall. To in-fall workouts, they had high hopes for Will Mercer, who was coming in as a Notre Dame transfer. He has electric stuff, but he's going to miss 2024 because of an arm injury. That's just unfortunate. You have David Shaw, who's going to, I think, be your closer coming off an injury as well. So we have to see how that works itself out. And there's some reshuffling going on in this bullpen. It definitely has the potential to be a good bullpen for sure. But my confidence meter is not quite there yet with the lineup and the starting pitching. It's not on that level quite yet. I need to see it first. I'd probably put it around a 6, 5.5, 6 for my confidence meter. It's not that I think they're going to be terrible, but there are major question marks here. And I think it's one of the reasons why you see the Longhorns ranked kind of in that 12 to 16 range in whatever poll you choose to look at, rather than in the top 10, or maybe even closer to the top 8, top 5-ish. Because of this bullpen, there's just a lot of question marks. But I really like Cody Howard. He's one of the guys that's going to be relied upon to kind of step to the front lines of this bullpen. Good fastball. It's got a quality slider. Also has feel for a changeup. Again, if you have 3 pitches in college baseball, you're doing yourself a major, major favor. Heston Toll is back for another year. He was kind of banged up last year. He's another guy that I think is going to be good this year. And then David Shaw. I'm really confident in him as a closer, but they're going to need 1 or 2 more guys at least to step to the forefront. They're going to need either Andre Duplantier, who's going to log some important innings this year. He's going to need to be better than he was last year, even though he was young. They're going to need Luke Harrison to step up. He could be a potential breakout candidate for this bullpen. Ace Whitehead showed some promising things last year. Like, you're going to need probably 2 or 3 of these guys to step up to really make this a really good bullpen to the point where you could elevate this team into like rarefied air. But until I see it, I just can't go to the levels that I have gone with the starting pitching or the offense. But
Yeah.
I will say, I think this offense is going to put this team into the position a lot of the time where maybe the bullpen won't matter as much, at least early on in the season. I do think this offense is going to go pretty quickly. So it could be good for the bullpen just to get their bearings under them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I think as you said, I think the bullpen is going to be the gauge of how far this team can go. Once you get to the College World Series, once you get to the college tournament, like the playoffs.
Yeah.
Last year, the conversation was our starters have to go long, or else we're kind of screwed. And then once you get put into that spot, you end up playing a team like Miami, and our starters did end up going long, and it kind of worked out in our favor there. But if it didn't, then it's just not the situation you want to be in. So this bullpen is going to be huge in terms of being able to win in multiple ways, and not having to rely on LBJ going 8 innings in the biggest games of the season. Like we need to be able to win in multiple ways. We need to be able to win a bullpen grind out game when it comes down to it.
Yeah, and especially in those midweek games, those Tuesday, Wednesday games, when you don't have your LBJ going on the mound, when you don't have Charlie Hurley going, or you don't have Tanner Witt going, you're going to need more of these bullpen guys to step up. And so the first couple, that's what I'll be watching for. The first couple midweek series of the year. How does David Pierce utilize this bullpen? Who are we seeing in what spots? And who looks good and who doesn't? That's going to be telling early on. Now, one characteristic of this Texas baseball team, and one of the reasons they've been so consistent, is because they may not start out very good, but they typically play their best baseball when it matters the most. And we've seen that. That's why this program has been to Omaha more times than any other program in college baseball history. And why they've been there, I think, 3 out of the past 6 seasons under David Pierce, something along those lines. Like, they'll figure something out. It's just, what is it going to be and how good is it going to be? They typically do. I actually think, and we can kind of close with this, they won the Big 12 last year in what was supposed to be kind of a transitional year. They actually ended up winning the Big 12. And they were this close, potentially, to getting back to Omaha once again. I think this year, look, TCU is really, really good. they're going to be really good this year. And that don't let me go down a total rabbit hole, but the spring game is April 20th. The TCU series in Austin is that same weekend. And so that weekend in Austin is going to be nuts. You could potentially have like a top 3 team coming in to the dish to play maybe a top 10 Texas team in one of the bigger Big 12 series of the entire season. And you could potentially have what I think is going to be the most hated Texas football spring game in 20 years. Just because of all the transfers, Quinn coming back, Arch as the main backup. There are a ton of reasons why, coming off a playoff berth, high expectations for this upcoming season. Like, that weekend is going to be nuts. But I'm actually fairly confident in this team's ability to go out and win the Big 12. Kansas State's going to be good, but TCU is going to be good. This conference will be a good conference. One of the best, I think, in the country. But if I were to put my confidence meter for the Longhorns going out to win the Big 12, it's probably right around a 7 solid. It can't go any higher than that just because there are question marks for this team here and there. And I think TCU on paper is more well-rounded. But watch out. Watch out for Texas. Don't never count this David Pierce-led program out because they just find their way to Omaha more times than not. So anything else you want to add there?
No, I think you touched on everything, man. I think this is a huge chance. This is a huge opportunity to go out with a bang in the Big 12. Like, they're not favored to beat TCU in terms of winning the Big 12 this year. So if they're able to do it, that would be so huge because that TCU team is stacked.
Yeah, it is. So there's our Texas baseball thoughts. We'll see how they look this upcoming weekend, right out of the gates against San Diego. And they have like a 5 or 6 game runway here before they get going to face teams like LSU, Vanderbilt, Texas State, and Texas A&M, all of which are top 25-ish caliber teams. So I don't know if I really have time to get into much of this. So I'll just real fast. I want to go over the Arch Manning nugget that I got over the weekend.
New segment, Manning Nuggets.
Manning nuggets would be right. I need to get to it real fast. Basically, if you didn't catch it, oh man. Let's take a quick break and gather our thoughts here.
We're the flagship program in this state, right? And
A bullshit. A bullshit. A bullshit. A bullshit.
Mean.
There's that.
Hello,
So, you know how they have Radio Row, or what do they call it?
yeah,
They call it Radio Row at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, they have all the big celebrities doing interviews for these different stations or podcasts or whatever. And one of them had Eli Manning on. And the question came up, of course, about Arch. And he basically said, Quinn's coming back. How do you feel about Arch? Do you think, what's your advice to him as an uncle? From an uncle standpoint, what are you telling Arch? Are you telling him to transfer? What do you think about this whole situation? And Eli basically shut that shit down from the jump. I wish I had the clip. I would have uploaded it into Restream. Maybe we can do that at a later point in time. But he basically stated, his career at Ole Miss. He redshirted a year, then sat a year, and then started 3 years. And I think Arch is on a similar pathway. And another source within the program said, and this has been reported millions of times, which is why I'm kind of getting tired of people asking about it. Arch didn't choose Texas just to choose Texas. He knew what situation he was walking into from day one. He knew Quinn was the starter from the day he committed, and he knew that Malik Murphy was in the room. Now, Malik Murphy transferred, and that's that. But to be fair, he probably didn't foresee. I think the plan was Quinn plays this past year, goes to the league. Maybe Murphy stays and he gets a year. But maybe there's more of a competition if it was a Murphy versus Manning discussion. So maybe, they thought Arch could be playing by, this upcoming season, going in year one in the SEC. I think some people probably thought that. But, the Mannings are different. Patience is key. And I think letting Arch bake in the Sarkeesian oven of quarterback development is the best thing that can happen for this Texas program. Let him continue to grow, learn the offense, learn behind Arch, learn under this Texas coaching staff, develop his body. Very young kid. I think he just turned 18 not too long ago. So I think people just need to stop with the Arch stuff until something changes at later notice. And I think, given Quinn's history of injuries, he's probably most likely going to get time this year in a game or two at the very least. I hate to say that, but all I can really go off of is what we've seen.
Yeah.
So, he's going to get time either way, right? Even if an injury doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So,
he'll most likely play in the bowl game.
But, Eli made a great point. You don't, just because there's people in front of you doesn't mean you transfer. That's not how the Mannings work. So I think people need to get in their mind. I don't know if it's a narrative to they want to push, clickbait, whatever it is, that Arch Manning's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
He didn't. If he wanted to play right away, he would have gone somewhere where he could play right away. But that's not what he did. And so that's that. Well, there's plenty of time this offseason to talk about Quinn, to talk about Arch, to talk about – we'll get more into that closer to spring ball. But these questions, man, about Arch in the transfer portal are becoming old really, really fast. But it's something as Texas fans that we're going to have to deal with. So that is what it is. But for Michael Wein, for Emmy Nixon, do you have any parting shots before we get out of here?
No.
Okay. For Michael Wein, for Emmy Nixon, we'll be back tomorrow with a very, very special episode 50 of Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. But until then, we're out of here. Peace.
We're the flagship program in this state, right? And
a bullshit, a bullshit, a bullshit, a bullshit.